we're live.
Good. I've asked Jed Lipke, representative, in and make any comments he wishes about this film, because I think this is the first time he's seen it also. Although he's a part of the first scene. Thank you, Jed.
Thank you, Vice Chair Labor. Thank you, committee. For the record, Jed Lipsky, Lamoille 1, and I do serve on the House Agriculture, Food Resilience, and Forestry Committee. And for those of you who saw this for the first time, I'm one of those who just seen this for the first time. But Vice Chair, if you'd like some comments to move this along, I'm happy to say that, and for full transparency, I'm a member, I'm not an active member with Vermont Forest Products Association. I am also on the board of the Northeast Loggers Association and a member of the Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast. And I also sit on the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap Implementation Committee. I have been a professional logger for most of my life, but it's probably about 59 years. So having this diverse voice is heartwarming to me. Some of you were here back when 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 was being offered and supported, and I was quite alarmed at how the Vermont forest landowners who participate, the 19,000 plus Vermont forest landowners that are participate in the use value appraisal program, also known as current use, did not have an opportunity to testify, as well as the timber harvesting community. So you saw, and I'll point out a few whose voices I recognize and people I know, former Commissioner Mike Snyder, who's a very enlightened forester, author, professor, also Dr. Ali Kasiba, who works for the University of Vermont. She was the first carbon forester ever hired by a state agency. She now works for the University of Vermont Extension Service. But these are very thoughtful and enlightened and bring diverse opinions and knowledge to what in today to be a responsible logger, there really isn't any other way. All of the responsibilities, whether it's for water quality, soil sustainability and productivity, wildlife habitat, particularly songbird, migratory songbird habitat, outdoor recreation. You saw Kingdom Trails represented, and hunting, and yes, the forest products industry and the rural Vermont economy and all the broader responsibilities that they take. But every harvest has to care about climate resiliency, has to care about water quality, has to think way into the future about biodiversity and invasives and a lot of responsibilities. So to see this organization fund and try to help educate the broader population means a lot to me. And if anyone has any questions before I pass it on to your other witnesses and go back to my committee, I'm open for questions.
Representative Pritchett.
I guess I just have one, Representative Lipsky. As you know, because you've been in our committee during some of these informational testimonies that we've had on the Wildlands Bill, I'd like to hear how you feel and how does it, how do you feel it will affect your industry?
Thank you, Representative Pritchett, for the question. Basically, I think, and I thank the committee for having diverse witnesses here on this. Wildlands as a notion, from my perspective, is not scientifically based and is a little more emotionally based. But I want to underscore that active management, which is what I advocate for, and responsible active management is critical. We have ecological reserve areas in statute, and I assure you that the foresters and the logging community have been sensitive to these, not just now, but for decades. Vernal pools, bogs, any streams, steep slope, fragile soil have been avoided and not harvested on. Are there wetlands incursions? Have been historically? Of course there have been, but under statute and under practices today, that's not how active management takes place. And I guess I'd like to stress that we feel we play in the bigger picture of the global greenhouse gas emission ecosystem diversity. Without active management, you cannot have a diverse structure. You can, just from a carbon perspective, creating early succession habitat sequesters much more carbon. So a lot of these issues, older growth, which those characteristics will continually emerge. Our forests are getting older every year. We're cutting significantly less in Vermont, maybe 3-to-1. We're growing more timber than we're harvesting. Other New England states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, maybe growing 9 or 10 times more than they harvest. So New England is doing well in restoring the valuable characteristics of a diverse forest. But without active management, I feel strongly, and the scientific community feels strongly, that we are putting our forests in peril, as opposed to by not intervening with science and care. So wildlands, and I also, there are 47 known forest types in North America. The northern hardwood forest type is the most diversified forest as far as species structure. On any given acre, we can find 25 or 30 different, whether coniferous or deciduous trees on any given acre. You can go to forest types, Doug fir, and from these western hemlock forests that have one species for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of acres. So we have a lot of going for us for positive long-term resiliency and biodiversity.
Thank you, Jim. We're running a little short on time.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, committee, for
1 minute, please.
Thank you. Like, hopefully a quick question for you. Thank you, Representative Lipsky. So this kind of concept is not one that we really talked about here. This matrix or patchwork of diverse landscape practices that we heard that mentioned several times in the video, rather than just large contiguous blocks of undisturbed wildlands. So my question to you is, what is the value of wildlands and old growth forests, and how big do they need to be? I mean, we're shooting for 9% of our landscape, 9% of Vermont to be old growth and undisturbed. What are your feelings, or what are your based scientific backings for how big it should be and how contiguous it needs to be?
well, the system of, you call them pearl cuts, or these modest half-acre, 3/4 of an acre, 1 acre clear patch cuts. And that was Mike Snyder, who was educating us on that program. This has been a concept that's developed, I would say, in the last 18 years, and it's become, sort of the best possibility when you engage in active management to diminish the impacts while gaining some of these structural diversities and improving habitat, particularly for songbirds and other migratory species. But how does that conflict? Let's talk about the Worcester Range Management Plan that FPR has presented, and they propose to manage 10% of that over a 20-year period. But let's be accurate. In that 10%, there may be 30 or 40 or even 60% of many of those cuts that will not be touched. So it's really much less than 10%. And that allows for not statutorily wild lands, but science, common sense, and an appreciation for those unique ecological areas to remain intact and important for all the diverse values that our forests bring us. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Next we have. Go live. Next we have. The later than planned. Sorry, Jason. Apologize.
Not at all.
We have the Commissioner of Department of Fish and Wildlife and staff member Andrea Schertzley. To discuss H23 and H608 licenses. Thank you very much. We are still live.
So happy to be here. I've also got with me our general counsel, Hannah Smith. And for the record, I'm Jason Batchelder. I'm Commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'd probably get into purple paint first, if that's acceptable to you all. Hope you're having a great Friday and look forward to the weekend. I also, I'm plugged in here in case we want to get into our conservation access license later. I've got a PowerPoint, but I just brought some notes to talk about purple paint, if you'll indulge me. As you know, Vermont's got a long history with posting, and this year, just to give you the full story, this year, due to actions of my own, we've had some great attention on what it means to post, who really values posting, private land as well, and that was certainly born of an effort within the department to help landowners, hunters, wardens, attorneys understand what 365 days of posting actually meant, because we were all over the place when it came to enforcement, and folks who posted came to us, and folks who managed posting, like town clerks, were often asking us around September every year what it meant to post each year, what to date your signs each year actually meant. And so for those of you who I haven't gotten to tell about this, we put forward an internal directive, or we worked on an internal directive, sent it to town clerks that said January 1st to December 31st will be the time that we consider to be posted each year. It didn't change a rule, it didn't change a law. And it fell poorly on the general public, and for that I apologize. That was on me for not seeing some of the hardships that folks endure to post their land. And we've rescinded that and agreed to honor posting as it was determined by the individual landowners for some time. It still leaves us in a bit of a conundrum at times when individual cases are challenged. And from wardens all the way through to attorneys, when it comes down to posting your land, let's say you do it September 1st, 2025, and we get to January 2026, someone could say that sign was not posted each year, and that's why we did that. We have since seen some great interest from the House and Senate and others in helping us fix that. We've also agreed to do rulemaking. And sort of in name, H723 and I believe S311 are the two that aim to help us mirror one of the efforts that we were going to do, which is essentially allowing people to post any day that they want. Registering at the town clerk would become the date of posting, and it's good until that time next year. And I would still, I I feel good about that bill. I feel good about those two bills. I feel good about leading with that. I don't feel as warm about purple paint, and I guess that'll cue my short testimony about this here. But I've been doing some homework about purple paint, and the way I see it, that purple paint is an effort to make posting easier for a person or an agent to be able to post their own land, marking corners and boundaries with purple paint. We at the department depend heavily on private land, open private land, for our ability to hunt, fish, forage, and otherwise access private land. And I won't hide from that. We depend on and we value our private landowners here in Vermont. We are strong defenders of private land, and wardens take complaints very seriously. When land is posted, we defend that person's right to post across the board. But it might surprise you to know, and I've told you some of you these numbers, that of the roughly 8,650 calls that wardens fielded last year, 8,650 plus, it's a little more than that, I believe. Around 50 of those were posted land complaints. So 0.5% of their time was spent fielding posted private property complaints. And undoubtedly, there were some that weren't captured, that were handled by a phone call, but those were the meaningful complaints where someone was drawing the ire of a landowner and drew the ire of a warden, and there was a case made. As you can see, it's a low probability occurrence. It's a low numbers occurrence for us, and I believe that leads to Vermonters' respect for land and landowners' respect for Vermonters, hunters, not specifically. I think anyone who values private land and values their privilege to own private land, which I do, and I treat it as such a privilege. It's not an occurrence because Vermonters respect it, and I know landowners want to be respected, and that's why we're here. Vermonters respect it because they know what a sign means. They see a sign and they turn around and leave, or they go and knock on a door 99.999% of the time. And I was just in the Senate, and I heard Brett Morrow say the same thing. That's how he was raised, and that's how the majority of folks that I know are raised. And it's certainly what the department teaches. Don't look at the date. If you see a sign, turn around. Purple paint laws are used throughout the country. People in Vermont are likely most familiar with Maine's purple paint law, which restricts permission for any reason without permission of the landowner to access that land. And I didn't read their law verbatim, but I did discuss with their private lands corporal at the Warden Service. And it's similar to if he had come and asked me how we like it. He said some people love it, some people don't love it. But he said in reality, people use signs as well in Maine. Some use purple paint, some use signs as well. It's not a fix-all to have purple paint. He said some people like the signs because everyone knows what they mean. And he said some people don't want to paint their beautiful trees, and I quote, with Barney purple paint. I thought that was pretty funny, so I included it. And his Maine accent really helped. Barney. So people do use signs as well. Purple paint has been used around the country in other places like Texas, and Texas is also a right to hunt state, like Vermont is. But that's where the similarities end in most states, right? Vermont has a de facto right to roam, not in law, but we like to think we have a de facto right to roam. Texas uses their purple paint to mark boundaries, in addition to an added no hunting notification. But if that purple paint is not there in Texas, God help you if you should try and go hunt there, right? Not the case in Vermont. So what I'm saying is it's not an apples to apples comparison across states. You have, let me back up. I've got a sentence here I want to read. So Vermont enjoys a de facto right to roam, and we also have an actual right to hunt per our Constitution, which you do know.
And just to clarify,
Please.
right to roam means what?
Oh,
You
it's
can
a-
walk on anybody's, if it's.
We don't have that in rule or law. I included de facto because I grew up feeling and knowing that if someone's land wasn't posted, I could go on it. I wasn't taught to do that. I was taught to go knock on a door if I wanted to use someone else's land. But there are, if you're up in the mountains and you're walking, not seeing posted signs, you're generally okay to walk and roam and forage, right? And certainly to hunt by constitution. We always recommend you know where you are and you know whose land that you are on. And certainly we go a long way out of our way to teach that in hunter education and all of our education platforms.
So you just said that there weren't, I think there are laws around what's called trespass,
For sure.
which might be related to right to roam. So when you say right to roam, you're acknowledging there's no constitutional anything
Correct.
in Vermont, but there are trespass laws. But what we learned yesterday from Ledge Council is our trespass laws are a completely different set of statutes than our posting and related to hunting. And probably my understanding yesterday, though nobody said this, is partly because we have a constitutional right to hunt. And so we have separate statutes specifically about that.
You're exactly right.
Okay, so many people feel they can, did the laws actually say if something's not posted? We didn't hear about the trespass laws yesterday. from
Sure.
Ledge Council.
Sure, sure.
We haven't really gotten this. So are you able to just clarify that?
Absolutely.
That's what that means?
So with Title 13, and I can't give you the direct statute, but it's an easy one to find, allows for notice to be given to anyone that they are not welcome on land if they are doing any activity, hiking, walking, mountain biking. If you see a posted sign, you may not cross it. You've been given notice, and that can be actual, it can be read. And I think Hannah could probably help me with this, but when I practice this as a warden, if someone was not hunting, not fishing, trapping is completely different because you must have landowner permission to trap. So trapping is left out of this. Even though the signs do say it, you could not go on private land and trap without notifying the landowner of your intentions. And if they say no, it's no. So trapping kind of gets left out of this. But if you were mountain biking, you saw a posted sign and you crossed it, you are subject to criminal penalty in Title 13. If you are hunting, because the Constitution says you have to have, well, you have a right and land's not enclosed, you as the General Assembly have defined what enclosed means, and it's INCLOSED, not EN, right? It's a funny word that we don't use anymore. But you've defined what enclosed means, and that has become what posting is. So walking, see a sign, you must stop. Hunting, you see a posted sign, I'm sorry, a no trespassing sign, you should stop. And almost we teach you to stop, and everyone that knows better stops. Had you not seen this, well, let's say you decided to trespass, go across that sign. The way it has been determined, because we have the constitutional right to hunt and fish, you could not be prosecuted because those signs do not meet what you have said enclosed has to be.
What I'm hearing, just to clarify, is trespassing, things that don't include hunting and fishing. If you see a sign, it doesn't have the same restriction, it doesn't have the same detail, like how far apart the signs need to be and such. If you see something that you think might say you shouldn't be trespassing, you really need to stop. But
Right.
if you're hunting or fishing, then there's much more specificity about exactly how those signs need to be posted, dated, spaced. And so there's just, it's another level of.
Correct. And it's all defined in 5201 and in Rule 14.
Thank you so much.
It's complicated, and it was a long education for me as a young warden to learn that. But I appreciate that.
Jason, this is Hannah Smith, with the department. I think the sort of the legal breakdown, which is probably more than you all need right now, but the courts have determined that constructive notice is enough to warn you against trespass. So if you know you shouldn't be there, you can be prosecuted. Does not apply in terms of hunting. There has to actually be, the landowner has to have met the specific requirements around enclosure.
So just, sorry.
Representative Caton.
So just on constructive notice, that might be something like verbal, somebody said verbally or
Yeah,
you a letter, or there's like a lot of other ways that could be.
it's a doctrine that's commonly known as a legal fiction. Like there is If you know, if you're supposed to know. It's harder to determine, but it's intended to protect landowners from unauthorized trespass. It does not apply in the context of hunting and fishing.
Thank you.
I think that runs me through my enclosed, that part of what I was gonna say. But I'd almost conclude here about what I've got to say, that in the onset of the bill, I said that this law, this purple paint law, is created to make it easier to post. And I'd like to turn and ask if it should be easier to post, because we have the right to hunt in Vermont. I would encourage you to consider implications of making it easier to post, and I've brought a few. Consider a new hunter or a not new hunter who lives in downtown Burlington and does not own any land. Having great amounts of posted land is a deterrent to that hunter. You might ask a career forester like Representative Lipsky, who looks at the forested landscape and its inability to regenerate because of overbrowsing. And a teenager like my son, who I wish would roam more, but he likes to be inside. I love him dearly. But asking a teenager who wants to roam with or without hunting, should there be more posted land? And saying these things, coming from all respect of private landowners, which I truly feel and defend. I don't feel like there should be, my personal opinion. I think there should be more open land and not less. But again, certainly leave that to you with the caveat that I respect all rights to post and private land. I feel, with that being said, I don't support 608. I again would steer you toward 723. And then I would open it up for questions about that rant.
Representative Taglia, then Representative Logan, and Sarita, did you have your,
Oh.
and then Representative Austin, in that order, please.
With respect to posting, it's kind of a two-part question. In Vermont, we have our licenses that go from January 1 to December 31. In other states, it goes from sometime in August for the hunting year. If we were to do that, change the licensure date for hunting, and would that make it easier for people who wanted to post, because they could do like for the 25-26 year, they could do that 2025/2026 on a poster? Would that help alleviate some of the issues, in your opinion?
I'm struggling with the correlation of hunting to posting, except outside of the dates that would remind everyone it's time to post or it's time to buy their license. I can see the correlation there. Coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, we are looking to change our fishing license to a 365-day license. So that would be applicable here. Whenever you bought it, it would be good till that year. We are pushing for that this year, and you may see some language on that soon. But I guess my answer is I don't know, and happy to have you educate me more.
Well, like with the instance, like you said, making it for the ease of posting. I don't mind walking through the snow with my dogs, and if I have to post this time of year, it's fine. But for some people who might not want to walk through 2 feet of snow, if they do it in July or August, when you can walk in, it's generally dry, depending on what kind of a year we have. But I also like the idea of that, because there's vegetation, so you can make your signs more visible, because they're supposed to be visible as well. Just kind of spitballing, throwing an idea out there to maybe alleviate some issues. And the other question is, I know New York does a license from, I think it's August 15th.
Mhm.
I don't know what our other neighbors do with when the license expires, or when you want to renew versus Vermont. I'm not familiar with New Hampshire or Maine.
Yeah, New York, you're correct. It's right around that time every year, and New Hampshire and Maine are both a calendar year license. I'm not sure about Massachusetts. I haven't bought a license there. But I certainly think that the effort that our rule intends to cover, and then also 723 and 311, they both would allow anytime that you would want to post, you could go out and do it. And the registration date with the town clerk would be the time that is properly and legally posted. It would also, just maybe a frivolous thing, it would stop the huge influx of paperwork to the town clerks at a certain time of year, which I don't know if is a burden or not, but it can't be easy to get all this paperwork at the same time every year. I haven't heard from them that it's an issue, but who knows? Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're okay.
Yes, thank you.
Representative.
That's thank you. Good to see you again. I think one of the things that we've heard from constituents is how difficult for older Vermonters to post their land here. And I'm just wondering if there's I'm wondering like, why couldn't you post, and when you don't want it posted, you somehow have a way of ending the posting. I'm trying to understand why you have to do it every year. I'm assuming there's a reason for identifying the landowner on the posting. And I also was reading last night about QR codes that they're putting on posting now. So you could, if you have a cell coverage and you have a phone, you can, see, maybe you can hunt and fish, but not trap. I mean, that could be a lot of information on the QR code. And I'm just wondering with technology, if there's just a way to do posting where people don't have to do it physically.
Sure. I think to answer that last question first, to do posting without notification would lead us to what would be what would be called a reverse posting state, where land is all private and unless you say people can come on it. Certainly not the direction I personally feel we should go. But some nuances in some of the things that you said. So signs currently don't have to have any notification of who the landowner is. Just for clarification, they need to be dated, but they don't need, there is a spot for your signature, but you don't have to do that according to what the General Assembly has said. We do have, which was created in between 2013 and 2015 through Commissioner Berry, is the ability to post by permission only. And we encourage that whenever we have the ability, and we have a spot on our website that allows you to print those signs for a template, hunting by permission only. And that would allow a person to approach a landowner and say, look, I just want to pick mushrooms, or I just want to hunt rabbits. And I think that was a really brilliant idea on his part, and a great concession that the General Assembly made for us to be allowed to do that. And to go back to the earlier, your first statement, it is a challenge if people own a huge portion of land in Vermont to post. I completely commiserate with that. I have seen folks seek out help from other folks to make sure that their corners and boundaries are marked. But it is, I believe, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but I think it is such a wonderful thing to be a landowner, and a privilege, and to have an intimate relationship with your neighbors and your boundaries, and perhaps the hunters that come on your land, and that it may not be such an awful thing to have a little bit of effort be required to do it. I know that's self-serving, and I know that's hard for people, for me to say, and for people to hear, if I just don't want people on my land. And I get that. And that there are certainly ways for folks to go about posting that I'm happy to talk to anyone about, and even find them help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Because I know that some people just can't do it.
Yep.
Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Commissioner. Nice to see you. Is there be any issues with just, you register with the town clerk, and then your posting just lasts for a year from that date, so that you can do it at different times of the year?
Not that I can see.
Yeah.
Not that I can see. Certainly, I'm just one person, but we've asked around, and it seems as though that is an amicable way to move ahead.
Yeah.
Having the date of registration be the date of posting.
Okay.
right? And,
Yep.
and still, we still have the requirement to date. But within this conversation, having the ability to post 365 days without worrying about what day that is,
Mhm.
would also have an allowance of putting 2 years on there at once. And this may be the first time I've said this in public, because this has been contentious. Writing the year 25, 26, or more appropriately, 26, 27,
Yeah, gotcha.
right? And registering twice, we feel that that's okay. We feel that would meet the letter of the law. Because if you're not worried about your signs falling down, or you're not worried about other.
So you could
other
post for
aspects,
2 years.
Post for
with
2
one
years
sign,
with one
yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
Yep, and I encourage folks to make sure they are in close contact with their signs or whomever's posting for them. Because squirrels love to make nests out of them.
Yeah.
Trees blow down, right? And at certain times of the year, there is forestation and foliage. But I think that that's something we can provide.
Just one follow-up, if I could, just here, just because I don't really know. So I decide to post my land, and then I decide I don't want to post it anymore. Do I just go rip down the signs and that's sufficient, or do I have to get back in touch with the town clerk?
I'll leave that one to council
Okay.
on the second part of the question.
Yeah.
That'd be my first step is to pull
Just
the
get rid of the
signs,
signs.
right? Unregistering with the town clerk, I think it might be just as easy as.
If the signs aren't there, really, it's
Yeah,
not.
it doesn't, yeah, right, okay, thank you.
Representative Pritchett and
That's
Representative
what I was
Boswell.
wondering about.
Sarita.
Oh, I'm sorry. You, me?
Yeah.
Okay. With the purple paint, like if you decided not to post anymore, you sold your land, what do you cut down the tree or?
I think pragmatically, you're left with cutting the tree down, brown paint over the purple paint, covering it up in some manner. I haven't gotten that far with the folks that live with it. I do know that some people put up posts with purple paint on the posts, and I think that suffices in some areas. I'm not sure the intent of this law. But putting up a post with a board on it with stripes. I think those are some of the ways that folks go about it. It does bring up one of the many issues, which we don't need to get into many of them, but having your land posted by someone that you don't want to do it.
Right,
Purple paint's a really easy way to do it.
I thought of that.
And that did come up in the conversation with one of the folks I had. But
Okay.
people could do that with signs too. Yeah, I don't want to, pretend like that might be a huge issue.
For our next.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
I don't know.
thank you. And thanks for doing this, Commissioner. Yeah, we heard on two bills yesterday and, you know, the 608, it was a short form bill. There's a lot of questions, you know, that we had and a lot of concerns I had with it. And I don't know about the other members, but I probably got 100 emails on this purple paint thing. So, and I would say the overwhelming majority of these emails were from folks that were elderly, that just couldn't, it was very difficult for them to get out, or a disability. I mean, it was overwhelmingly, you know, the amount of emails I got. So from my perspective, you know, I'm trying to think of a way that, how can we accommodate these people and make it a little easier for them? If I'm hearing this 2-year thing, I'm kind of liking that. You know, I like the idea of that. It just, you know, giving them an extension so this doesn't have to, you know, to be so difficult and hard on. So if consideration can be done, you know, and I don't know what a reasonable term would be. Obviously, you have, you know, signs will deteriorate a little bit and squirrels get into them and a bunch of other stuff. But, you know, I think, you know, having some way to, you know, to help these folks out with this concern, I think is important to me. You know, the purple paint thing just, you know, I brought up so many concerns of how this thing can go sideways. And as you said, I mean, there's nothing stopping from anybody from getting 10 cans of paint, painting the whole state of Vermont. And so I just, what I heard from this, from most of the people, the purple paint was about convenience. It was about convenience and it was about helping them with, the concern. And I think we can still do that under the system that we have. So I hope that's where we.
If I can respond to that, I completely commiserate. And I too got a lot of those emails. And if it's any solace to folks who may be listening or that you could return a message to, I go back to my initial discussion around the 99.99% of Vermonters who see a sign, even if it's in disrepair. And there are many examples of those, right? And it leads me to the origin of those signs, and it leads me to the conclusion of those signs. The origin was probably a bad experience, or maybe a philosophical disagreement with hunting, fishing, consumptive use of any kind, doesn't matter, right? I wouldn't ask a person why they posted. It's up to them. But leading them to the conclusion, why do you want those post signs up? Do you want people excluded, or do you want people arrested, charged, and convicted? And when you ask that question, which was something that we did a lot as wardens, it was almost never, do I want this person arrested, charged, and convicted? Sometimes, if it was the second offense, maybe. And so I say all this to reassure folks that let's say they let a year go by. Let's say they let 2 years go by, and a squirrel ate half their sign, or something happened to one of their trees and it fell over, and they met all the other aspects of the law that they were required to meet. Or even if they were what we call roadside posted, the occurrences of trespass on that land just because of one sign are magnificent. One sign alone with no registering at the town clerk does it for so many people and keeps people off of their land, even without any of what the General Assembly has asked them to do to be what we call legally posted. Just doing that keeps most people off. To me, acknowledging that there's this nefarious group of hunters sneaking around reading dates on signs is fun to think. It's funny. I saw it as wardens. There were people that are like, it's my constitutional right, but I can't even tell you how once maybe did I find someone that said, well, it's not legally posted, you can't stop me. That just did not happen. And I'm glad you gave me that opportunity to say that, because I hadn't thought of it in a long time, but I should have been singing that originally, right? I should have been telling people your signs are respected by almost everyone. Like I'd like to say everyone, because that's in reality, it's almost everyone. And so not to say that these laws aren't there for them. But if a person that had a year or fell into a time when it was posed, I still don't think it's the end of people respecting their land. Yeah. Hopefully that made sense.
We have a lot of people wanting to speak, so first in order is Representative Logan, then it's Representative Tagliaferri, then it's Representative North, and then it's Representative Austin.
No, I'm about to.
You're done. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice
Go ahead.
Chair. Is there a reason we couldn't offer folks a longer posting period, especially if they wanted to, install relatively permanent signage of some kind, to post their property that they would be responsible for removing if they were to sell the property or something like that, and maintain in order to ensure that it's visible?
Sure. Do you, thank you for the question. And do you mean permanent as in, I'm not trying to be funny, but a monument, or like a piece of granite, or like something immovable like that? Or do you mean something in statute that would say you're just good from here on out?
I mean something more like a metal sign.
Yeah, certainly 100% lawful at as we sit here today. The only requirement, their only requirements is that they have to be 8.5 by 11 and of contrasting colors dated each year. That's the requirements of the sign. So if you live in the Rupert area, this is the only place I remember it being, but there are signs that used to have to be much bigger by statute prior to 1960, I believe, maybe prior to 1950. And they've grown into trees that are hundreds of years old trees have grown around them, and halfway through that tree is this metal sign that says all of the things that are required to be said to keep people off your land. It's really remarkable to see how resilient these trees are and how they've grown around these. And I know they still exist. I've seen them recently. So if you wanted to use metal, rust-proof, anything that you want, you can certainly do that. The ones that are most easily accessible, the most easily accessible is our website. You can print them.
Yeah.
They're 8.5 by 11. I think that was some forethought there. But then your hardware store are these sort of Typar, Tyvek signs that staple on the trees. They don't hurt the tree. And I think those are the most easily accessible for folks. And that's why you see them. They're the ones people see and they go to. But if I have a neighbor who meets the criteria we've discussed, and he wanted to post, and I said, why don't we try safety zone signs, which some of you may be familiar with, and they're big and they're visible. And so we did safety zones signs for him. It just prevents shooting. He's like, I don't want to keep hikers off. He's like, I just worry about, dogs, whatever he sees. He doesn't want people shooting on his land. So we did safety zone signs for him. And they're free. They're not only big and visible, but they're free. And they don't restrict a person's ability to get an antlerless tag, which posting does. I don't know if you know about that whole rabbit hole. If you post, our antlerless lottery is not open to you as a landowner. And it's a way to allow harvest of antlerless deer to keep the forest regeneration. But those don't prohibit that. And it's not an issue for most people, but there exists the ability to post with much bigger signs, much more resilient signs if they wish. That's just a easy fix.
But then they have to update the year every
Correct.
year on the sign.
Yes.
Is there any reason we wouldn't want to extend that required period?
It's a great question. So having this pressure of the right to hunt is the answer to that, right? I want everyone to know how much I respect private land, but as a person who's got 80,000 hunters, 70,000 hunters, depending on the year, that need open private land, I don't want to make the path too easy, right? For folks to say, to folks to slam the door on all these hunters. And I know it's a difficult thing for me to sit here and say. It's a difficult thing for people to hear me say. But I think with our history and our constitution, it's something that I have to say. I need to look out for the hunters, because I am one, and because I'm protective of them as much as I'm protective of the private landowners' ability to post. We give private landowners a good tool with which to post, and we give hunters the education to stay off. So I think meeting in the middle and not giving too much on either end is where my answer. I know it sounds political and mealy mouth.
Can I ask one more follow-up question, please?
Certainly.
So I think just to answer the question about like what motivated this in the first place, there was reference to like older Vermonters or people with disabilities who just it's just harder for them to access those signs, which is why the paint was suggested. So I'm just like, it just seems to me like there must be some sort of way to accommodate a need like that. And also make hunting as accessible as possible.
Yeah, and I do think that there is an avenue that helps with that right now, and that's 723. It's not. I'm talking a lot about it. It's not my bill, but it does align with some of the things we need to do and we hope to do. Allow people to post when they want at a time that's convenient, nice days in May or June, July, and then allowing 2 years of get your marker, you write 2 years on there instead of one, and then your trip to the town clerk is all you need to do to make that legal. And I think that is a good meet in the middle. There is also the bill that was introduced in the Senate this morning that proposes a 5-year runway. So that is undoubtedly something you'll hear about. I haven't had a chance to testify on it. It was just introduced an hour ago.
Of course. Next person, Representative Jack LaVille.
Kind of following on the Representative Butcher's comments about hardship. Whether you're going out into the woods to drive a post to then paint it, or paint it and then drive it into the ground, or spraying paint on trees or brushing it onto trees, or tacking a poster to a tree, I think for me, I would need to see it quantify the difference in hardship. How one is so much easier than the other. I mean, they both sound great, and I'm sure for a number of different people, they would both work, but I would just, because I received a number of the emails and the hardship. I know some of my land is a little bit more difficult to tack it on a poster on a tree because of how steep it might be, or the proximity to a ditch for visibility. But I'm trying to figure out how the purple paint solves all of the hardship. I just hope that that's taken into consideration when we think of this.
Thank you.
Representative North.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, interesting statistic, 8.5% of men can't see purple.
That's a problem.
Including my husband.
8.5%. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
8.5%
gonna
of
say
men are
color blindness
colorblind.
is-
Oh, interesting.
So, I don't think purple paint works. Certainly not unilaterally or ubiquitously. But I'm very interested in what Representative Logan was questioning along the lines of having more permanent signage that you wouldn't have to visit on a frequent basis. What is limiting us to 2 years? It sounds like current statute, or if we passed 723, is that what would be required to get to 2 years? And what's limiting it to 2 years if the word annually is still in there?
So the word itself, the words themselves, each year are what is why we're here, because I thought I could fix that by saying January 1st to December 31st, giving everyone 365 full days, whereas saying each year can make people scratch their head over. It's not each year anymore if it says 2025. It says 25, it's 26. You're not dated each year, right? That was the conundrum we found ourselves in. And so if we went to 365 days and you went out in June and did it, and you wrote 26, 27 on there, come next June, if you trusted that your signs were all legitimate, maybe you did check them, you could just go to the town clerk and pay your $5 again, re-register, and you'd be all set. And so I do think 723 gets us to that point. It gets us 2 years instead of one. It's clear, and it allows people to go whenever they like.
Why couldn't you say 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31? That's each year individually listed. And pay, $30 or, whatever it's $5 a year or something like that, just pay the 5 times, however many years you want to go out. As long as you trust that sign to survive that long. That would still be allowable. That's each year if it's each year listed.
What do you think? We have discussed this internally, and we've settled ourselves on the 2 years, but I don't know beyond that, and I don't mean to point at you, I'm so sorry.
No,
I feel like we could come back with an answer to that without much trouble.
there would be, you'd have to update the language around registering annually as well. I mean, you'd have to revise the entire statute. It would make it significant. I think that the idea in part is what's the objective of this law? What's the requirement that you're trying to impose on private landowners? So no, I mean, nothing, if you're looking at revising the entire section, you want to only require registration with the town clerk to happen every 5 years. And in the intervening time, you could write 5 years on your sign and you never have to go back out there. The legislature has that discretion to make significant revisions. The way it's currently written, you do have to register annually and date each year, whatever that means.
The bill that was introduced this morning, thank you very much. The bill that was introduced this morning proposes to do that. If I can speak for him, Senator Morrow has at least one constituent with a lot of land. It's hard. They had a poaching incident they didn't like, and they want to post, but they want to be able to make it easier They have some long straight shots. They can look with the binoculars. Those signs are there. I'm confident as long as but I can't see that they're dated. I just I want to do it every 5 years. And that was his impetus behind introducing that. It gets to some of what you're saying. And we would certainly have opportunity to testify on that at another time. I haven't thought too much about the implications, but it's out there.
That's just my question. Thank you.
Representative Richard.
So under 723, well, I guess the first question I want to ask is as far as land being posted, if it's a hunting or fishing trapping violation, I'm assuming that game wards are the enforcement part of that. Who's the enforcement part if it's trespassing?
Sometimes,
State police, or is that still within the warden's?
sometimes it's wardens. It depends, I should say. So criminal trespass would normally be handled by the enforcement entity that's responsible for that jurisdiction in a non-Title 10 enforcement setting. So wardens generally focus on Title 10. They get into animal cruelty, which is Title 13. They get into boating, which is Title 23. If there was a trespassing violation, and you know, wardens, troopers, deputy sheriffs, they're all friends. They all go to the same academy. They would talk. They say, you know what, this guy is out there on private land, or this gal's out there on private land. Would you? And they'd ask a warden would go do it. So there's nothing set in stone. The warden's standard operating procedures manual says they'll focus on Title 10 as their primary duty. Take that for what you will. As a warden, if it was in the woods, I handled it. And if it was a criminal trespass on somebody's front lawn, it was likely a municipal officer or a trooper or a deputy sheriff.
So we were told yesterday when the bill was presented by legal counsel, and I just want to clarify that the reason I thought it was kind of specific because it specifically said hunting, fishing, trapping. And we were told that that's because of statute. It didn't include trespassing. It didn't include any other activities. And I was wondering, is that really so? Is it?
So I think I'm understanding your question. So 5201, I have to look at it. I've got the book right here. I'd have to look at it to see if it includes the words trespassing. Unless you know right off the top of your head. You all have one of these? These are handy and they're free. We can get you one if you want. They're not free, but they'd be free to you.
Section 5201 doesn't refer to trespass.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, it's a good point, and I probably could answer this without looking. This 5201 refers to poaching a private preserve. Some history for you, and maybe Mr. O'Grady got into it yesterday, or Mr. Showman. Posting was created in Vermont to give you your own place to hunt. It wasn't created to keep me out. It was created for you to have a place to hunt of your own. It's some funny history about that. It's fun. It's hard to think about that. Now we think about keeping hunters out because we don't like hunting. It was created to keep hunters out because I'm hunting it. And just some neat history about that. So that's why it doesn't include trespassing. Thank you for that.
So this new bill is a Senate bill that
It was introduced this morning. It's a Senate bill, and essentially does what H723 does. It just extends the posting date out to 5 years. And as you said, you would have to date it this year, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and you'd be good. Or however you landed on how that would be notified. Could be you wrote 26 and people can count. It's good for 5 years. But I haven't testified on it. I didn't hear the full Ledge Council breakdown of their thoughts on it. But undoubtedly we will.
Representative Jacob.
Just wanted to share that it's S299 from, introduced by Senator Mattis.
I messed that up. Sorry. Thank you.
299.
Representative Christie.
Sure, just a comment, I think, thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds like, the most comfortable area to approach would be a multi-year posting. And that the purple paint is not necessarily favored. It's kind of what I'm interpreting from the conversation and the answers that we're getting this morning. So I think that would be a good option, a good start. I think, I've worked in other areas where you make a massive change. In this case, going from a sign to a purple paint. You make that massive switch and it can be problematic. And how's that enforced? But if you make smaller changes in increments, and this I see as a compromise, going to a multi-year sign might be a way to get in that direction. So I appreciate that. If I've interpreted correctly.
If you'd like an answer, I certainly like 723. I like the way that that's written. I like the way that it allows more than 1 year. And I like the way that it allows people to post when they like.
Yes.
Full disclosure, it's a warden for 20 plus years, and some wardens interpreted it just that way. Some town clerks interpreted it just that way. Some attorneys did, but when they did not, that cued the big issues. And so having clarity around it is good.
Thank you.
Representative Richard.
Yeah, I'm just reading this bill, and the other thing I like in it, because it was a question I was gonna ask, is that it says every 5 years or after a change in land ownership. So I would assume what that means is if the property's sold, the property transfer is done, that posting is null and void until the new owner does it and re-registers it.
And that was the real estate agent coming out.
Commissioner, one of the things that bothers me about paint, I really don't care which color, but talking about purple. Other states use a 1 inch wide, 8 inch long paint strip. That doesn't contain the owner's name, address, contact numbers. So if a person goes and sees a purple strip, there's no cell phone coverage in most of my woods and the surrounding woods near me. So QR code's not going to work if you put a QR code pin on it or whatever. I find painting really not acceptable. But what I would like to see, and I haven't found it in any bill, other than notification of a new landowner, is actually at the time prior to transfer, full disclosure by the present landowner, the new buyer. They should know. It's just like when you do a transfer of property and that was in a prior UVA. The new buyer doesn't know that. They create a significant fine. So I'd just like to see disclosure. Representative Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, so we've talked a little bit about a multi-year posting, and we talked about 2, and it sounds like there's a Senate bill with 5. So the first part I guess I would ask is there some period that you think is just too long to last for? And sort of related to that, is there any benefit in making it posting somewhat difficult so that more land just stays open? Like people are like, it's just a pain, I'm not going to do it. Like, your thoughts on that would be interesting.
Sure. I would answer first by saying I'd like to get an agency perspective from my boss on this.
Yeah.
I do think that there are some pitfalls in going too long on a posting date. I feel as though, and I've said before, closing the door on the hunting community by posting out a great distance is a detriment to us all, and it's not foolproof for the landowner either. I can see pitfalls there as well. looking at, what other states deal with regards to, having maybe a right to hunt and also no ability to access land is not where I want to end up. It ends us up into a reverse posting realm, and getting down that road too far is something I would like to caution against. Especially for hunters, but for everyone. I think it's a slippery slope when we're existing in a time of less than neighborly news everywhere you look. And I'm not going to get into, I'm not going to pretend to be too worldly. I think looking here inside Vermont, I would look instead to people to be looking for ways to be more neighborly, and to keep that intimate relationship between who's looking to use your land and who may be using your land and who you don't want to use your land. Moving ahead that way. I think 5 years, I haven't got to my comfort level with it yet, but I completely see the side of folks who think that is a good fix. I completely get that, right? But great question.
Thanks very much.
Are any other further questions for our Representative Jacob?
Commissioner, I just want to thank you for, particularly, I want to thank you for, I didn't realize you had done this, rescinding the guidance when you learned that it was causing a lot of concern. And thank you and your team for, trying to address this issue I can totally understand when it's not being applied in the same way, what that does for you and your wardens. And so really want to try and work on this collectively to, at the very least, get to something that we think was working relatively well before. But we also, as Representative Pritchard and others have mentioned, we've all around this table, including you, heard overwhelmingly that as our community ages, more and more people are struggling with the logistics of posting their land. And so just really appreciate that we're trying to figure out how to support that for folks who have various reasons to really struggle with that. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Team is owed the thanks, and the secretary as well. A lot of great minds, me excluded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Adjourn. Wonderful. Live. Offline.
Until 2.
Thank you.